It's November 1985. It's the first meeting of a Soviet General Secretary and an American president in 6 years. And the president is looking after goldfish. On doctor's advice, President Reagan arrives in Geneva 2 days before General Secretary Gorbachev to ensure he overcomes jet lag. Diplomats have secured the Maison des Saussures, an 18th century mansion owned by Prince Karim Aga Khan, for the president to stay in during the summit. Among all the State Department documents for summit preparations, some are handwritten and personal. The prince's son has written to President Reagan asking him to look after his pet goldfish. After relative nuclear calm during almost 2 decades of détente, the presidency of Ronald Reagan has raised the concern of nuclear war to its highest points since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Breaking with the policy of his predecessors, the man who put his Cold War strategy into 4 words, "we win, they lose," has not only increased defense spending to unmatched levels, but talked about limited nuclear warfare and tactical nuclear weapons, even if in hypotheticals, and has jumped on the idea of a nuclear shield published in Human Events, which becomes the Strategic Defense Initiative. But only a warrior can slay the dragon. In Geneva, proving that what matters in diplomacy really is the personal, Reagan and Gorbachev set the ball rolling for nuclear reductions and the end of the Cold War as it had been. Unknown to protesters across Western capitals who oppose Reagan's military buildup and the Soviet officials who think he will, quote, string us up with renewed first strike capability from SDI, Reagan himself has been evolving in his thinking about nuclear weapons. After becoming president, the Defense Department have told him that their estimates are 150 million Americans dying in any nuclear conflict with the USSR, and Reagan became the first US president since Eisenhower to sit in on a war game. Total in 5 days, the computerized operation Ivy League ended with the death of the president in a nuclear strike on Washington. Mr. Reagan, slowly but surely, became as hopeful as those protesting him that nuclear weapons could become obsolete. Gorbachev and Reagan meet in the cold days at the start of the European winter to a friendly handshake and are relieved to be able to speak face to face and cut to the chase. Gorbachev begins by talking about arms and the mistrust between the two sides, but adds that he wishes to share that Soviet seismologists have estimated a very high chance within the subsequent 3 years of a major earthquake of 7.5 or higher on the Richter scale in California. Later, Reagan will say to Jack Matlock that Matlock had been correct in his prediction. Reagan did like Gorbachev. The morning of the 18th, just before Reagan was to meet Gorbachev, the president awoke to find that one of the fish entrusted into his care had died during the night. He asked the Secret Service to go into the city and find the closest looking replacement that they could find. Maybe Nancy Reagan's astrology had something to it. That very day, the old Soviet-US relations also died and were replaced with new life. As President Reagan was asked in Red Square when he visited Gorbachev a few years later, "Do you still think you're in an evil empire?" "No, I was talking about another time in another era." Although this wasn't the summit at Reykjavik, it's the summit that led to Reykjavik, with a joint statement of, in principle, reducing nuclear arms in the US and USSR by 50%. As the two shook hands, Reagan whispered into Gorbachev's ear, "I bet the hardliners in both our countries are bleeding while we shake hands."